and Shanae Edmund Verily to come up, please. Mel and Shanae are part of Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is an amazing story. It's one of the stories that inspires me because Grand Rapids, like Detroit, has faced real challenges around poverty, real challenges around how do you take this data out and make it a community call to action for a community solution. Mel, now I'm gonna, I just know what you do, but I'm now realizing, what is your title, Mel?
Long title. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mel Atkins. I'm the Executive Director of Community Student Affairs for Grand Rapids Public Schools.
What I will just say is Mel is my internal change agent in the Grand Rapids Public Schools. He has made sure they've had the data. He's made sure the principals are on board. He has been essential. And then Shanae here is a senior program officer?
Senior program officer.
With DeVos. And my story is I've been working in Grand Rapids for probably 4 or 5 years before I met Shanae and Mel. And at the time, Grand Rapids had a very rich community effort called the Kent School Services Network, which is doing fabulous work actually throughout the and collaborations with social services providers, and in those schools where there was consistent leadership, we saw dramatic reductions in chronic absence. But we couldn't get it to go to scale. We couldn't get district-wide numbers. Shanae invited us in, worked with us so that we could work with Mel, work with the then new superintendent, Teresa Neal, and that's really how the Grand Rapids story in its current version took place. So I'm going to ask the two of you to please share, and I'm hoping this is a little echoey. I'm worried we're getting feedback from the mics. Anyway, let me start off with a story, and then or a question that you can answer. Tell us about Grand Rapids Public Schools, and tell us, what have you done? What's been the work that you started to do on chronic absence?
So I'll start that. And just let me know if that's better. A little feedback. For Grand Rapids Public Schools, we are the 5th largest school district in the state of Michigan, just over 16,500 students. 82% of our kids have free reduced lunch, and we have 52 schools, or 52 programs in GRPS. And so, what's not on here is we just passed a bond that we were pretty excited about, $175 billion. That's going to touch a lot of schools and bring us some schools and make it more equitable for their education. So that just passed this past November, but that shows that the community does support GRPS, which is a big thing. As you see in the back, is our superintendent was actually in my role that I'm in now before she became superintendent. And so community engagement is near and dear to her heart. She started as literally a student worker. I'm gonna say almost she was literally 14 or 16 years old, started in GRPS. And now she is the superintendent of the schools. And what that tells you is she's almost done every job along the way. And it brings credibility because she's walked that walk. She was a secretary. She's walked it, and you never know where somebody's going. And so she was able to come in when we had a superintendent change to really galvanize and saying, we have to look at attendance. The story behind it is we were trying to figure out with our data is why were we making gains when she took over as superintendent? What is it? And the only thing she said was, Mel, take a look at attendance. And I'll never forget that meeting. Take a look at it. That changed everything. Take a look at attendance. Take a look at Hetty's work. And then so I said, okay. And then you kind of go back to your office, figure out what to do. So I started to call on our community partner, one of Shanae Edmund Verily.
So Shanae, you can tell us, why did you take on this issue? Why was this important?
Yeah, I work for people who need to stay in business. So the bottom line is they want change quickly, and they use their money to really leverage and invest in things. And I work for a unit that really is about unleashing potential. That the power of potential that's in every single one of us. And so our trustee was really just floored that we were leaving kids behind. And he said, we've got to stop doing that. What can we do? So we created a whole new department in our foundation to be able to look at this. And so I was at a conference, and I heard of Hetty's work. I knew she had been in Grand Rapids. Mel and I are like tied at the hips. And I said to him, you know, Mel, I'm wondering if Grand Rapids has this problem. Because here's the deal. Hetty talked about the data being masked. That at the end of the day, because of government regulations and all these compliance things that many have to do, we were looking at the wrong metric. It's like the parable of the boiling frog, right? The frog starts to boil slowly until all of a sudden we find out that we have tons of kids not coming to school. And so this was a really, really important thing. And we knew that this could leverage something around academics.
So when we look, So when we looked at the data, this was 3 years ago, we didn't know. We looked at truancy, average daily attendance like everyone else. We still look at those metrics, but that's not the only piece. We realized that 36.4% of our students were chronically absent. So you put that over 1 in 3 are chronically absent. And then what we tried to do is put a face to it. Because sometimes you can get behind the numbers, and the numbers are the numbers. But you have to put who are these students that are missing. And for the most part, they were black and brown kids that are missing school. And so what we did is we came out with a challenge. It was, yep, the numbers. Oh, okay. Yep.
Your data's slide.
So we went from 36.4% to right now, our most up-to-date data through semester 1 is 21.1% of our students are chronically absent. Not where we're at, but if you look at from the beginning to now, that is a 42% reduction in chronic absenteeism. And the key with that, most of it came recently, within this past year and a half. And then I get to that in a minute, but each division, elementary, middle, and high, have seen reductions in chronic absenteeism. We still have issues at the high school level. The older they get, the harder it becomes. Just this school year alone, when you look at the rate of chronic absenteeism, in every grade level between K through 12 is down when you're comparing the last 2 semesters, semester 1 this year compared to last year. But if you look at grades K, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 9, that rate of chronic absenteeism has reduced by more than 20%. And part of that is key, especially these transition grades. We start with kindergarten, for example, nationally and also in Grand Rapids, it shows that kids miss more days in kindergarten, K-5, than any other grade. And we have held true with that every year. So, and I always say your best predictor of what's going to happen is your previous behavior. And so we have to get kids on the right track is one of them. So that's a good question. So what you see is the more years you are chronically absent, the more likelihood you're going to be below grade level. And we have NWA, the MAP testing, to look at this data. Well, what you don't see on here is, so we looked at, since we started our initiative, so it's less than 2% of the current students are considered persistently chronically absent. So that means since we started in 2013, some kids leave, some kids, you get new kids. The kids that have been there, less than 2% have been over these number of years. The rate of severe chronic absenteeism, the worst category, we've nearly cut that in half. So who is this impacting a lot is the kids that were missing a lot of school, sometimes 36 or more days. It was actually 48.1% of the students, we cut that in half. I would say.
All right, let's get into, I think they're convinced.
Yep.
What makes this work? How do you turn this around? How do you got those students up?
So we're going to go through each one, but we looked at it as really 5 areas that we did. And I'll start with the district and site leadership. That the superintendent had to buy in. And how she bought in was this. She says she thinks chronic absenteeism is so important, she's going to make it part of her evaluation. So her job now, a portion of it is tied to getting kids to come to school. But guess what? If she does it, everybody else has to have it too. I have it on the superintendent's cabinet. All our principals have part of their evaluation. So she made it, this is important. We know what's monitored gets done. You have to give people resources, but you also have to monitor. You have to give checks and balances. And if she's going to make it part of her evaluation, trust me, she holds everyone accountable with that. Community partners.
Sure. Where am I clicking? Bottom one. Okay, good. Thanks. I think that how many of you are in organizations that are community and or parent organizations in the audience here today? So we've got quite a few. We're all tied together, and we're all in this together. And I appreciate that our superintendent is from the community and had that job before and knew that there was power and resources. Like Barrington said, all the resources that we have all the resources that we need. And so we ended up really harnessing the resources in the community. I run an organization or initiative called I Believe I Become, which is a ground game. You know, it's about 150 organizations, churches, faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, anyone that's not necessarily in education. And guess what? There's lots of passion, lots of creativity, lots of innovation. And what school districts can do is really harness the power that's in those organizations because they see kids, they know families, they're connected in ways that they want to see these improvements happen. And what you would see is that folks just had a level of enthusiasm that was incredible. And they began to mobilize. We clearly said, let's move this needle, and we can do it together. And every single one of those organizations got on board. In fact, after a while, everyone was trying to come. You know, and so the question for Detroit is who is that entity that can bring together all of your community-based organizations and all those parent organizations to empower them so that we are all on the same page. In collective impact, there's this idea called mutually reinforcing, you know, and that's what we want to be doing is mutual reinforcement.
So we look at it in Grand Rapids as really kind of 3 prongs to this addressing chronic absenteeism. There's a district level response, there's a building level response, and then also community response. Before we even started, we had to make a mind shift though. The mind shift we made was, we're going to share this data publicly. You don't have to FOIA it. You don't have to be savvy parent to get it. We're going to share it because we have a plan. If we didn't have a plan, we wouldn't feel comfortable sharing it. We went out and contacted the media and said, at the time, 36% of our students were chronically absent. They were not asking for it. We said, we're going to give it to you. Because we thought everyone played a role in this message. So what we did was, with the Community Foundation, create the plan, but establish the baseline. So we had to tell people, what does that mean? What is chronic absenteeism? What are some resources? What are some strategies? Retraining the system. You know, and that doesn't happen overnight. It really doesn't. But you have to be persistent in your messaging. Then we had toolkits We push a data on a weekly basis. We have weekly reports, monthly reports, quarterly reports, end of the year reports. Data has to be actionable, but also timely. You know, that was, then and at the school level, they had to start to engage their students, engage their parents through goal setting, inspiring their staff. You know, teachers play a role in this. Rerunning the campaign. We had a campaign. We switched our campaign now. It's Challenge 5. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we had a previous campaign before it that didn't work as well. And then at the community level.
Yeah, I'm going to stand up because I just get excited about this. But let me just say this, that at the community level, the power of actually having data. Now think about this. How in the world could we help if we can't see? Right? And so the boldness that the district had to push data through master data sharing agreements to nonprofits, to churches, to organizations, and said, here are all of our kids. And here's what we can do about it. And I'll give you an example. I used to be out in the field, and I remember one young man would start showing up all the time. And he would come to the organization earlier and earlier and earlier. And I asked our staff, I said, why is this kid here at 12 o'clock? He would say he was out of school. He was out of class, you know, and so forth and so on. If we had had the data at that time, what we found out is the kid wasn't going to school. You know, so the power of the data itself is really important. And I also would say that when you're connecting with parents at the aspirational level, we would have these community meetings, and we ask the parents, what is the idea that's keeping your kids from being successful? And parents begin to define these things. And then we rallied, and we had like this rally cry. We go, I believe, I become, I believe, I become. And parents began to do, you know, folks would even come to these neighborhood meetings having saved up all their money so they could get on the bus because they were so inspired. Because at the end of the day, families care deeply about their kids, you know, and community organizations care deeply and are in relationships with families. And so when we're all on the same page, the power of really transforming a whole community, you can see it in these numbers that you see here.
One thing I want to reiterate that Shanae just said was, I'll put kind of my hat, the district hat back on. We were a district, I think, like most districts in the sense that we read every book, we read every research article, we knew what it said. So our way, a few years ago, of engaging parents, we said, only if parents did this. Because we're the experts, you know. Well, guess what? Didn't work. No one showed up. And you're in the same rut that you're in. And it's easy to fall in. You know, you're always busy. There's always a deadline. But we never slowed down until we really started to partner with Shanae and her team. And it was through the neighborhood engagement meetings that it was held at our schools. It was held at our schools. They were easily getting 400 or 500 people each event.
Each neighborhood.
Each neighborhood. And we were getting, at the same school, 4 or 5 people. We said, why is that? And part of it, and the reason why is how you engage the families. We were coming at it from the knower stance. We know it, and if you just do this. They came about it, how do we collectively come together?
So Mel and Shanae, I know our friend Karen Mapp will pick up on these things, but we are going to have to keep moving along on our slides.
Yep, I'll keep moving. So what happened with that is, obviously we jumped on board, and we said, we're going to change our mental model of how we do parent engagement. And so here is our structure of our parent engagement model. And the attendance challenge falls under this model, because we have to engage parents. Challenge 5, just jump right to challenge 5.
This is the parent.
Parent University. So Parent University was, parents asked for, because now we have a new model. We're partnering with parents. We're not coming out with just solutions. We're saying, asking for your opinion, and it was through through the neighborhood engagement model that parents asked for resources, tools, and it's around these bucket areas. It wasn't called Parent University at the time. We didn't know what we were going to call it. It was like, I need help on effective parenting. I need help to navigate the educational system. You have all this jargon, you have all these things. I don't get it. Personal growth and development, health and wellness are our 4 areas. And so it took almost 2 years, and it through a superintendent change, to get this off the ground. But we partnered with parents, community partners for literally 2 years. You think about initiatives, usually initiatives have to happen tomorrow. But this one did.
Yeah. And let me just say this, that actually the parents did come up with Parent University. There is wisdom in the community, and they know what they need if we would listen to them. And I appreciate that the district and the superintendent did that, because when they formed their own action groups, parents said, we need a Parent University. And then when we brought them together as the foundation, we asked them, what's the vision? And you know what they said? Confident advocates of our children's success. That's what we want to be. And so so they began to do that. And then we started putting this thing called, what we're now calling Challenge 5. Mel alluded to that we initially had a campaign that seemed to be a little bit more out of reach. It was called Make Every Day Count. And I was standing at a big community event. There were about 4,000 people in the park. And I was trying to tell them about this thing. And I said, they don't know what to do. What is it that they need to do? What's the benchmark? So I'm up there, no more than 5, no more than 5. And then our communications people heard that, and they said, Sinead, we can say that better and more succinctly. And that's how we got Challenge 5. Challenge 5, strive for less than 5. It makes sense, right? Everybody could do it. I know now what the benchmark is. So when my kid's missing 2 weeks, I'm like, whoa, strive for less than 5. And then we put our body parts in it. And everybody started walking around doing this little 5 thing, And so all of a sudden, everybody could know what we were that we were pulling in a certain direction, and knew exactly what the metric would be.
And just quickly, and we have like 1 more minute.
Sure.
Is if you go into any one of our schools, we think disruptive messaging is the right way to go. Don't hide the numbers. We have these huge leaderboards, and it's really a grade level challenge. Every month they post, for example, kindergarten versus first grade versus second grade versus third grade. As soon as you walk in, that's the first thing you see at every school. And the school has to be able to articulate what's the plan, because you're not going to see 100% on any board.
Now, I can tell you that this was really shocking and we should give Mel Atkins and Teresa Neal a big hand clap, because that's bold to expose yourself and to put it right out there on Front Street. And when our communications people said, we're going to put some big leaderboards out there, and they're going to be 8 feet big. And we were like, oh my gosh, and we're going to actually put the data out there. I tell you, can I say this? Some principals sort of kind of wanted to put that back in their office. But,
the first year, yeah.
They did. But you know what? When they dared to do it, they took the courage, they had bravery, and when those leaderboards are up there with the real numbers, teachers could see it, principals could see it, but community members could see it, and they were like, we can do better than this. And that is begin to, I think, really inspire things.
And we want to keep moving along here.
The last slide is really, because the theme is everyone plays a role in this, is we start meeting with local churches, businesses, departments, any stores, and we have maps across the city. If we zoomed in on this map, it will be actually Grand Rapids streets. If you live in, it means something if you live in Grand Rapids. And it shows you how many students in that zone are chronically absent. So the big number is the big number. But now for you, we have in this 2-block radius, for the pastor, I need you to talk to your church because you have 20 students that are chronically absent. I need you, for this business, when you see it's good, during school hours, not coming to school, they're coming to your store. What are you going to do about it?
So now the whole community, I mean, community policing is asking a question as opposed to, interacting in some negative way. Why aren't you in school? Aren't you supposed to be in school? So everybody now is on message. We actually created billboards in these neighborhoods based on these geo maps. We've got kids here, then are we going to post a big old billboard? And I can tell you from all of our research, we've seen that parents get information from word of mouth and from billboards. So we flanked businesses, and we flanked churches, and we flanked schools with yard signs, like the political signs, with yard signs. And it all had a kid strive for less than 5. Now everybody, because everybody wants to do the right thing. They want to be on purpose, and they want their kids succeeding.
So first of all, can you join me in giving a hand to our colleagues in Grand Rapids? They do such amazing work. You can see how you can go from 37% chronic absence to 21% that's been in the last 3 years, with the greatest gains in the last 18 months. Couple quick things for you to take from this. This doesn't happen overnight. It took over, the first year we didn't get any outcomes.
No.
It wasn't until the second year that you started to see outcomes. By the way, Attendance Works was gone by the time we'd helped in the beginning build an infrastructure. It was Mel, Shanae, and the incredible team that was in place that made this happen. So you also, in Detroit, you're going to have to figure out who's the team.
Yeah.
The second thing you need to remember from this is 80% of what you're going to try in Detroit, someone else tried. You got a lot going on in Grand Rapids. If you try to start your effort from scratch, you'll never get it to the point where you have the 20%, which I call tailoring and making that real to your own realities and your own strengths. That's where you want to be able to focus on. You want to be able to take as much as you can from Grand Rapids, from anywhere else who has similar populations to yours, and then you want to make it your own and make it that you have your own champions who will move this work out and make sure your kids in Detroit are in school so they can learn. Thank you.